Good morning. In this week's Torah portion, even before the Jewish people go out of Egypt, Moshe Rabbeinu instructs the Jewish people that when you become a free nation, on this day of Passover, each and every year, you should gather with your children and tell them the story at the Passover Seder of the story of how God took us out of Egypt, because God wants every human being to be free, and no human being should ever oppress another human being, because every human being is created in the image of God. And the Torah says you should speak to every one of your children, whether it's the wise child or the wicked child or the simple child or even the child who does not know how to ask. And here we are, literally 3,300 years later, and every year on Passover, that's what Jewish families around the world do. And this was the amazing foresight of Moshe Rabbeinu, that he realized that in order for freedom to not just be a one-time event, but to be something that is preserved in every generation, the only way to do that is through education. You can't preserve freedom through force, through laws, through armies, through police forces. The only way is to engrave and instill upon our children's hearts and minds the values of Judaism and freedom, so that they should live in a way that they aspire for not only freedom for themselves, but for every human being. And indeed, we see that many mighty nations have come and gone throughout history because their nationhood was built on might and power. But the Jewish people, who rarely had any might or power throughout the millenniums, persevered and carried on till this day, because Moshe Rabbeinu said, when you go out of Egypt, don't celebrate with monuments or with parades or with victory marches, but do it through Jewish education. When you tell a Jewish child their story, who they are, where they come from, their heritage, and that God took us out because God wants us to remember never to oppress another human being, but to respect the dignity of every human being, because every human being was created by God. That's the way you preserve freedom for all generations. Yesterday I was walking with my daughter Malka, who's expecting, and a man stopped us in the street and said, "Congratulations." And then he turned to my daughter and he said, "What are you having, a Democrat or a Republican?" What we aspire to is not to have divisions amongst mankind, parties, but rather children who are law-abiding not just because they fear the consequences of breaking the law, God forbid, but because they realize the truths and the eternal value of living by God's principles as laid down in the Torah. And this is the very first lesson that Moshe Rabbeinu taught the Jewish people even before they left Egypt. Have a wonderful day.